Yo, what is going on, ladies and gentlemen? In today's video, I'm gonna be sharing with you how to bulletproof your shoulders, all right? If you're watching this already, chances are you probably already have some sort of shoulder discomfort, impingement, or some sort of shoulder issue or pain. If you aren't, then good for you for watching this as a precautionary measure, because if you injure your shoulder or any joint or any body part, you're going to be set back for quite some time, and shoulder injuries themselves are very common. Personally, for me, I injured my shoulder when I was doing some heavy dumbbell presses overhead without warming up. You know, I was lifting 70 pounds, and then right when I was about to go up, it just flopped over because I couldn't stabilize my shoulder in that position. I wasn't strong enough and I didn't really warm up. So this video that I'm gonna be sharing with you is gonna teach you how to properly warm up and how to strengthen your shoulder in the different ranges of motion that it's capable of, so you can have some badass strong shoulders, all right? Having strong shoulders, having enough thoracic mobility, having enough mobility in the shoulder joint itself is the key to bulletproofing your shoulders, all right? A lot of people don't understand that shoulder stability, shoulder range of motion, all of this is connected to the rest of your body. So if you have very tight hips, let's say your hips can't go into internal rotation, or you lack internal rotation in your hips, or you don't have enough flexibility in your thoracic spine, which is basically the middle portion of your spine, right? T1 to T12. When you have stiffness in your thoracic spine, your shoulder is now limited in its range of motion. So let me explain to you. Let's say you have a hunchback or a rounded shoulder, and if you want to try this with me, if you round yourself forward and you try to raise your arm above your head, instantly what ends up happening is you begin to lock out at certain points, because just the position of the shoulder and the scapula itself, it can't move on top of your rib cage or on top of your thoracic spine and the rest of your body, because you're being stuck in a certain position. But as soon as you extend your body, extend your thoracic spine, you can now raise your arms a lot higher. So the key to bulletproofing your shoulder is to first restore mobility and flexibility to other body parts, most notably your thoracic spine. You want to make sure you're stretching out your chest, because your chest is an internal rotator of the shoulder. You want to make sure you're stretching out your lats. You want to make sure you're stretching out the muscles in the neck so that you don't have forward head posture. You're stretching out your hips or your hamstrings. All of these are going to take into account. Basically, it's a full body approach. And in today's video, I'm going to share with you the core essence of what it takes to bulletproof your shoulders. Now, there's bits and pieces that I left out, but again, the key ingredients is first restore flexibility and mobility to your body, to the rest of the body parts that I was discovering, and then strengthening your body, your shoulders more specifically, in the different ranges of motion that it's capable of. If you didn't know, your shoulder is a very complex joint, and it can do a series of ranges of motion, right? It can do things like flexion, extension. It can do things like horizontal abduction, adduction, external rotation, upward rotation. You want to be able to understand the different ranges of motion that your shoulder can go into, and then you want to stabilize and strengthen it in those positions, and that is how you achieve bulletproof shoulders, all right? So without further ado, let's get right into it. I'm gonna share with you the routine that I run every time I do my shoulders. I used to do it every time I do my upper body, but now I mainly do it during my shoulder days. So we're gonna swipe right into the videos, and I'm gonna show you what I go over, all right? So the very first thing that I do when I stretch out my shoulders, or not stretch out my shoulders, bulletproof my shoulders, is I get into the Asian squat position, just as you see here. If you haven't watched that video about fixing your scoliosis, or the best exercise for your scoliosis, you want to make sure you check that out. What I do here is I passively lengthen my thoracic spine, lengthen my spine in general, by just hanging loose, holding on to something, and letting gravity do its part. You see me wiggling my legs here because I'm teaching my body how to get into internal and external rotation of my hips, and also actively stretching out my lats, all right? This is very important so that your shoulder can have adequate mobility. If your lats are super tight, you're going to be excessively rounded forward, and your shoulder will not be able to get into full extension, okay? Okay, and then if you don't have a band, left this out. I'm using a micro resistant band. I'll send a link on the bottom so that you have an idea of where to get it. But what I'm doing here is I'm taking the micro-resistant band after I've done my Asian squat and I've decompressed my spine and stretched out my thoracic spine. I'm pulling it above my head so it can really strengthen my upward rotators in that position. And then now I'm also strengthening my body in the bent forward position where I'm retracting. I'm basically doing a bent row, but with the micro-resistant band. So I'm just pulling, squeezing my shoulder blades together and just doing retractions. This is the first motion that I'm gonna teach my body to do, because after I've done the Asian squat and everything is aligned, I wanna strengthen my body in that position. And then after I've done the retraction going from the bottom up, now I do an upward rotation like a face pull. I do about 10 reps of these, and I make sure I'm inhaling at the top of the movement, and then I'm externally rotating my shoulders when I feel like my shoulder blades are pulled forward all the way, okay? Notice how I kind of pause at the end and I pulsate a little bit. Well, that teaches my body how to be more stable in that upward rotation position. And then after this, I do around the worlds. So from face pulls, I basically go all the way back and down so that I can get that extra range of motion at the bottom that is abnormal. So you're trying to teach your body even more ranges of motion, abnormal ranges of motion to be strong in. And I'm a huge advocate of this, but you want to make sure you do this very controlled and very mindfully. Otherwise, you can easily pinch your shoulders. But the more you can take your body into different ranges of motion and strengthen it and stabilize in that range of motion, the more adaptive your shoulder can become. Now I'm going into a protracted state with an internal rotation, and I'm doing internal and external rotation so that I can set my shoulder joint in the right position. And then I set myself up for the next movement. This movement right here is external rotation, but I'm adding movement to it. This is kind of advanced, so I want to take a really quick moment to explain this real quick. I recommend just stationary, standing in that position and doing external rotation first. Because I've done this so many times, I decided to progress it a little bit and start walking with the movement. Basically what that's doing, at least for me, is I'm teaching my body how to stabilize my shoulder joint as I'm walking, as I'm integrating my body, my upper and lower extremities together. I walk around and I find the position where I feel my shoulder joint the most, and I make sure I really contract my core, and I'm walking with my glutes, and everything is just connecting a lot better as opposed to just standing and doing external rotation. I find that that helps me out a lot more, and I always try to progress things. I always try to advance things. And as you can see here, I'm just speeding up the video a little bit because I do it on both sides. And then I get into internal rotation as well. As I'm doing these internal and external rotations, I look away from the position that I'm internally and externally rotating from. So I'm stretching out my SCM, my scalenes and whatnot, muscles in my neck. I'm basically just doing what feels right for my body. But I'm teaching my body as I'm doing all these movements to go through the different ranges of motion that my shoulder is in. And as I'm moving, it's putting my shoulder in even more ranges of motion so that it's different from what I'm doing. So now what I'm doing in this position is I'm internally rotating and externally rotating my position, my shoulder as I am pushing my hips back, okay? So this is integrating shoulder and thoracic mobility, and then also allowing my body to naturally fall into the right position that it wants to go in. It gravitates towards. And then I drop into the thoracic, I drop into the Asian squat, and I'm allowing the resistance of the band and gravity itself to pull my thoracic spine, my spine loose. And then once I feel like everything is straightened out, I then strengthen my retractors in that position by doing behind the neck pulls with the micro-resistant band. And then again, that strengthens my rotator cuff muscles, my rhomboids, my lower trapezius, all of these muscles which are key players in stabilizing the shoulder. And then again, I go into internal and external rotation, protracting my shoulders. So you want to focus on retracting and protracting your shoulders, internal and external rotation, thoracic mobility. And then from this position, I just do basic banded rows, and then doing an underhand grip at the end range, and then going back into overhand and just internally and externally rotating my shoulders. And then after this, I'm gonna go into face pulls where I'm kind of using my traps now. I'm going at a higher position, and then I'll go into face pulls closer up to my eyes. So again, I just did 3, 4, 5 different ranges of motion in that same position, but all just by switching my hand grip, all by switching the angle I'm attacking it at, okay? So the final few exercises that I'm gonna do now that I find help a lot during my overhead pressing is I do a face pull all the way to my chin, and then I pull it backwards into behind my head, and then I allow the band to pull me forward as I'm holding it in that position and just doing upright shoulder presses, all right? You can kind of see me messing up a little bit here, but that's just because I'm trying to find the motion that feels the best for my shoulders. So I have it pulled all the way back, and then I am pressing up and down, up and down. As I'm pressing up and down, what ends up happening is the band then wants to pull me forward again. So I'm resisting that. So I'm activating my external rotators, my lower traps, my rhomboids to stabilize my shoulder girdle as I'm doing an upward pressing movement. And then now I'm doing a overhead press with the band in front of my body, and then pushing it back and then all the way back in front. Same concept, but just different little technique. And that is it, guys. That is it for the exercises. There was a lot that I covered in that video, and I felt like I kind of rambled a bit in some of it and wasn't able to articulate myself the way I wanted to. But needless to say, if you rewatch this video and just watch what I'm doing and pay attention to bits and pieces of what I'm saying in the video, you'll get a lot from this video, because all the stuff I learned here, I've cultivated over years of practicing this technique. So at the end of the day, the key things you want to understand and really remember when it comes down to having bulletproof shoulders is you need to have adequate mobility and flexibility inside of your body, all right? Most notably, hip mobility, thoracic mobility. You want to have some flexibility in your chest, in your lats, neck, so that your shoulder has a good foundation to move in different ranges of motion, all right? If you don't have adequate flexibility or mobility, your shoulder is gonna get stuck or caught in certain ranges of motion, and it's gonna pinch. I said range of motion so many times in this video because that's what the shoulder does. It has an insane amount of range of motion. So if you can't get enough range of motion, then you can't adequately stabilize and strengthen your body or your shoulder in those positions. So restore mobility, flexibility into the different body parts, and then strengthen and stabilize your shoulder in those different ranges of motion, and you will have very, very strong shoulders, okay? So this is Kevin with Optimize Essentials. If you want to support me, make sure you like this video, share it with a friend, drop some comments down below if you have any questions. And if you're looking for a posture program or a fitness program, check out my website. I have some cool stuff for you guys. It'll help condense your learning period. And if not, stay tuned for more. I have a lot of videos coming your way. So have a wonderful day. Peace.